Hello everyone and welcome to your horoscope for the week of March the 13th to 19th, 2023. We have quite an intense and important week ahead of us, just before yet another very important week, and then yet a very another important week. So this is how the month of March is going to be, one intensity after another, and quite a powerful energy shift starts at the very end of the week. So, yes, it's going to be quite. Well, actually, I'm so sorry to do this, but I have a badge that I got from someone lying before me, and it's so suggestive of how this week is going to be. So, please allow me to show it to you, and it speaks for itself. I'm not sure if it's visible, but there is this little cute doggy sitting with a mug of something, and he says or thinks this is fine, but obviously there are flames engulfing him. So, yes, some situations are absolutely going to be quite tight, so to speak. So, we begin the week with a really powerful triple conjunction where Jupiter meets Chiron and Vesta. Both Chiron and Vesta are asteroids, but this is where we can greatly experience their significance, their importance, their influence, because Jupiter expands them. Now, this Chiron and Jupiter is a little bit both ways, and sometimes it may manifest simultaneously. Because Chiron is the wounded healer, the wound, and in the sign of Aries, sometimes to go forward, to begin anew, to progress, to initiate, to take action, sometimes survival, life saving, life changing, life altering action, we do need to, rush forward, follow the initiation, be self centered in a certain way, and that wounds, may wound, can wound everything and everyone around us. But survival sometimes leaves us no choice, so we may find ourselves being the wound giver, the wounder, the aggressor, so to speak, one way or another, but yet sometimes this is not a question of choice. Simultaneously, we can also be the healer, we can also be the hero, we can also be the help giver, the lender of an arm, a supportive arm, or support someone in their healing journey, or begin our own profound healing journey. We can be that hero, that healer, that Chiron for ourselves. And this conjunction also includes Vesta, and this is such a benevolent energy. Vesta is fiery in her nature, goddess of the sacred flame, the protector of the household. After all, in Aries, she burns very brightly. She protects the new, she protects the initiation. She protects both the wounded and the wound giver. And sometimes, as I said, this is fated because all of this plays out under Saturn just entered the sign of Pisces, finalities. Saturn in itself is also the harvester, the end of the cycle. Saturn represents also the moment when something needs to have its final stages. Pisces being the sign of final stages. When something, for example, from matter transcends into spirit, when something evaporates, or when that very something becomes immortal, eternal, always there, part of the communion of all. So, yes, this is a very important period. So, this Jupiter and Chiron and Vesta conjunction can feel that much more fated. Needless to mention, Pluto is an heretic. At the very, very last degrees and even minutes of the sign of Capricorn, it is heavily fated. It is grinding down and setting the stage for when it retrogrades out of Aquarius back into these final degrees of Capricorn, and then yet it will go forward, leaving, going past these degrees again. And in January, of course, next year, it will be back in Aquarius at that 0 degrees. So this Pluto is also setting the stages for certain big events, but at the same time it triggers other events. Because when that Pluto is at 0 degrees in Aquarius once again in January, we should already be living the new or the first bigger event of whatever we initiated or has been born, let's say, exactly in this period that we are going into. So Vesta's influence here offers a certain kind of protection. It offers a certain kind of gentleness, sacredness, the sacred wound, the martyrdom, where, yes, the wound is there, but the sacredness of it, that that makes it be experienced, be felt in a totally different way, in an actually sacred way. And Saturn fortifies the spirit in Pisces. Saturn is there to support, even to protect, to guard strong faith, strong belief, through conviction in a deeper spiritual sense. Saturn has to guard both expressions of Pisces, and sometimes its restrictive qualities, where it restricts harm or chaos or whatever, because the fulfillment of the opposite are not just met, but are there in excess. So, in that sense, Saturn, alchemically speaking, has to do its protective job, because it is the karmic judge. It is the power player which kind of, symbolically speaking, decides what is allowed to manifest and what not. Pisces is the dreams of karma, of the past, of actions of it. Pisces is actually the realm of deeper intent, benevolence, malevolence. So Pisces is exactly that which never is very clear, which always is under a shroud of mystery. So Saturn is exactly in that sign, making things real. But of course, we must also admit that Saturn in itself also suffers certain alchemical reactions in the sign of Pisces, because Pisces is dissolving, dissolution, disillusion even. So this is also a period of heavy, heavy disillusioning. When at first hand, this Neptune, especially this week, which for reasons that we will see very shortly next in the horoscope. So this is where this illusion might be served on the silver tray, more obvious, the Sun in Pisces conjunct Neptune, obvious than ever, for this to invite us to have a heavy disillusionment therapy, like a detox, like for example an overdose, which kind of triggers the detox. Why? Because all of this is squaring Mars. Mars in Gemini, in a very intellectual, mental, palpable, down to earth, the lower mind kind of sign. So even the lower part of our being has to be an understanding, and this is where the disillusionment happens. where we need to kind of do the right things, even if the decision is hard. And also this week, Venus will exit the sign of Aries and enter into the sign of Taurus, her home sign of Taurus. But before she exits Aries, she is in, an erratic position, and she will hold a square with Pluto. So again, this represents a fight in values. What is worth it? What is not? What is okay to have power over us and what is not, or who is not? And, this might cause an inner struggle, an inner conflict, which ultimately is won by Pluto, the cold hard fact and truth that, well, if someone truly does not serve us or our path forward, in that sense, Aries, our initiation, well, then whatever has to be done, Pluto, termination, endings, or moments of courage, moments of bravery, all of this, or compromises or using certain powers, Venus square Pluto. Venus in the sign of Aries, we must not forget. The power of attraction, Pluto sometimes can solve certain things, but the decision is a heavy one. Not And Jupiter, Chiron, and Vesta are squaring Pallas Athena in the sign of Cancer. So that is also in the sign of Cancer. For example, the path forward for the sake of the new beginning, initiation, healing, um, whatever fate brought to the table, relocation might be the best possible Palestina tactic. Or sometimes, well, for the sake of stability, for the sake of Palestina and Cancer, emotional well being, peace, calm, family, harmony, tranquility, we need to surrender an irritated ego and not really care all that much about pride and all of these also Aries expressions. So this is where pride might be a bit wounded, or we need to set pride and stuff like that aside. Now, of course, this can play out quite the opposite way, where for those people who are rarely dignified, dignity must be there. Like with But this is also where family dynamics can change because of external elements, challenges, job changes, career changes. For some people, this is where Palestina, where is home for them? Well, they figured out that already, of course, that it's not a place, but then it is a feeling inside, but that will lead them to the conclusion, well, they really kind of want a family and stability and life not to be as adventurous, or for some people quite the opposite. So getting out of a certain even energetic and even emotional comfort zone. And at this time, it's where Neptune, the Sun, and Mercury are one next to each other in the sign of Pisces. And the sun is, we can say the ego, the light of our consciousness. In the sign of Pisces, the past, the memories, the karmic relationship, our own spirituality, our own connection with the self, our own, life story, our own dream world, you know, and Mercury, the planet of the mind, not being all that comfortable in the sign of Pisces. But for intuitive people, who have strong Piscean understanding, whose Mercury learned the Piscean way of thinking, so to speak, well, for them it might be much more comfortable, but regardless, it's not all that easy for the mind, and this will be highlighted because Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, where Mars is in, squares Mars in Gemini. So, this is where there can be a strong reality check. It does not compute, and you understand finally why. But that means choices, decisions, dates, timing, stress. For some people, this can mean a period when their immune system, when their mental sphere is really, really bombarded, anxiety, very heavy dreams. This is where they might be feel a little bit without energy, sabotaged from within. For other people, this is where it's all a dream. What is reality? So this is not a very easy period in any way, but the element of disillusionment where, and this is where I'm speaking more about the Mars and Neptune square, that is not all that new, because we had that same aspect before Mars went retrograde, then under Mars retrograde, Neptune retrograde, sorry, and then now. So life was slowly, surely already setting us up for the disillusionment. It kind of says, well, look, this or that, whatever, this may be whichever area of life doesn't work. And life brought all the reasons why it doesn't work. So that doesn't mean it's a dream killer. It means strong readaptation, because both Pisces and Gemini are mutable energies, so they can very easily readapt. But Mars in Gemini has to be tempered, and it does have to make decisions and choices based on deep knowledge of the self, and even the lower self here with Gemini, and other people in our lives. So yes, this needs wisdom, this needs understanding, this needs us to be in good psychological mood, or balanced as realistic as possible. Yet that's not enough, because Saturn now in Pisces does require a strong element of faith and belief, not necessarily religiously, but the religious can be one expression. Belief in our cause, in the self, in belief in something. It needs a structure in belief, and it needs us to be our own best friends, to want to heal, to want to take inner things, spiritual things, the inner, anything that has to do with the psyche, as deep as it goes, not to mention ultimately the divine, that there is a divine element in our lives. There is such a thing as destiny or karma playing. We need to take, all of us need to take that a hint more seriously in this next 2.5 to 3 years, because that is very, very important. And Saturn is in Pisces. If we pay our respects to the divine, to the invisible, and that includes within us the soul, our feelings, our mental, especially now with Mars in Gemini and then Pluto in Aquarius. Mental health is so important, very, very. But now it's Pisces, so mental is just a tiny, the health of the soul basically, and that's so much more than mind. That is when you really need to follow your soul's callings. You need to feed your soul with happiness, whatever that means to you, forgiveness, being a decent human being, passionately following that which you find yourself immersed into. Pisces, immersion. So, and going back to where we began, the Neptune, Sun, and Mercury conjunction, at the beginning of the week, as I said, the Sun is sandwiched between Mercury and Neptune. So this is where the mind is illuminated, a bit combusted by the Sun, Mercury and the Sun, and Neptune, the illusion, or I say illusion because that's the most probable example here due to the Mars square. The surreal element is illuminated, understood, highlighted. It does blow our minds, but it is there. We see things under a different light. Hence, the square Mars in Gemini, we make choices, decisions, steps. We are in understanding. Now, the element of pain, this, the disillusionment, oh, how painful, well, that is right now more or less optional because, as I said, Mars and Neptune square kind of prepared us for this. Life did one way or another prepare us for whatever we're facing right now. And also at the same time, there's so much activity happening in the sign of Aries. As I said, Jupiter, Chiron, Vesta are within each other. There is Salacia, a dwarf planet, also in the sign of Aries. There are more, but this is more important to me. There is Jupiter there, and then there is Eris, of course, there, planetoid Eris, goddess of discord. So Eris is the rebel. Eris is the rebel. She is also an expression of truth and what truth does. Truth sometimes brings chaos because that chaos is when the illusion, the tower falls. And Venus conjunct Eris, a rebellion of the heart, a rebellion, a burst of emotion, a rebellion of, let's say, inner truth, one's personal truth. It is something that sets us free, freedom seeking energy. The wound, whatever that may be, if we heal it, or we find a healer, or we find the truth, or we find understanding, or we find a direction, it is ultimately positive, liberating. It sets us free. But then we must not forget that Venus will be squaring Pluto. So this is where we are doing it. We are heavily emotionally caught up in this, and this might also change our financial behavior even for the very short, close future, because Venus then enters Taurus, the financial sector. So it will be about money, investment, financial situation, stability, and even collectively speaking. And this is where Venus and Pluto grinding down in Capricorn, we see already that certain banks are collapsing. So yes, this goes back to 2008. It is not an easy energy financially and economically, so neither collectively, neither personally. So we need to be also in preparation mode. This is why that Mars square Neptune, wisdom, a lot of wisdom and reality checks are needed, because Neptune, the spirit, Jupiter in the sign of Aries, can also represent let's follow the spirit. Why the spirit? Because Jupiter in a certain way represents our beliefs, our connection, how we understand, interpret spirit, how we interpret the divine, how we interpret the signs, how we interpret, how we use our Neptune, let's say. So, we follow it, but this is where the square can tell us, okay, but be keep in keep be aware that maybe not so easy times are approaching, and plan in such and such a way, because there are things the divine can do for you, there are things the divine cannot do for you. So, and Saturn in the sign of Pisces also works very well with diligence, with modesty, with humbleness, with, you know, allowing the divine to help in its own accord without, actually begging or in a foolish manner relying upon it. Because the divine kind of helps the self but not the ego. And it's very hard to understand what is ego and not in Aries because it's survival energy. So, But the Sun and Mercury will be squaring Mars, so that square is also one of understanding, one of deciphering. It's not easy. As I said, it changes choices, it changes behaviors, it's sudden, and this can be disruptive for transport, The element of water can come into play and disrupt a great deal. I don't know, in some places perhaps snowfall, in others rainfall, activity at sea. Uranus is also very, very active, but maybe not in necessarily in a highly visible way. But you can imagine Uranus will bring the solar flares and the Earth movements and stuff like that. Venus and Aries conjunction bring the earthquake, economically speaking, where it is rubbing in, and Aries is ultimately rebellious energy. We can never ever forget this period. Pluto and erratic. And let's go to the good news, because also as Saturn entered Pisces, it holds a trine with Haumea, also dwarf planet, a trans-Neptunian object, and Haumea, it is an expression of quantum creation, especially in the sign of Scorpio, what the deep unconscious can create. Many times it creates problems. Yes, absolutely. But not creational energy is creational energy, especially if if we look at the quantum, the miraculous nature of Haumea, and quick, fast, mind-blowing. And Scorpio actually is a water sign which has the most connection to the realm of mind. It is a gateway to Sagittarius, ultimately, higher understanding. So, with Saturn, this can represent manifestations. It can represent where, our faith, our principles, our inner guidance, Saturn in the sign of Pisces, actually leads to miraculous moments. So this is quite a positive energy. Now, at the same time, Juno, Jupiter's wife, entered the sign of Taurus. So this is where certain partnerships, certain connections can be made definite. So Pluto comes with the element of fate. To some we say bye bye, to others we welcome permanently. Who stays in our life and what stays on our lives? We make decisions, because when it comes to partnership, Juno, it's not necessarily the person who's a partner. Job, contract, object, anything can be a partner. There's us and that. It is part of our reality, yet it is separate from us. That can also be the subject of, for example, seventh house, including. And another more important moment energetically next week, at least according to my opinion, is the 16th, when we have this triple conjunction, when the Sun, Neptune, and Mercury meet in the sky in a very tight conjunction, 25-24 degrees, and they square Mars. So this is where that moment of disillusionment, that moment also of understanding. Now, I would like to mention that on the world stage, this can play out as really pulling the wool over someone's eyes, informational battle, psychological warfare, manipulation at its finest. And this is where I'm not really the conspiracy theorist, but everything will be flooded news, internet, so there will be things happening. And speaking about conspiracies, this is where ultimately new ones, the likes of which, Pluto in Aquarius is going to be highlighting, are gonna be visible. And whatever is stirring up this week, well, ultimately it might escalate the week that follows, when we have the sun entering the sign of Aries, the equinox. And then we all, Aries equinox is the astrological new year. That is truly when even the sun, the light of creativity ultimately, because we speak about all these planets, including myself, and I put emphasis, of course, on the outer planets. And as we can see when the trans-Neptunian objects, and very little is placed on the sun and moon, who are really always, always, always the stars of the show. Because what do all the other planets, all the astrological show, all the inner show, all outer reality, inner reality, means to us, what it means to us, the sun, what we generate as a reaction, emotions, feelings, what we create as a reaction. If we eat life, the sun is the burn, what we burn, the burning within, and how does the burning make us feel, basically? It makes us behave in a way. And the moon, well, the moon is everything, really. What can I... The moon is the queen, really. She cannot be dethroned by anything. And many times, because of the larger context, myself including, are just presuming that everyone else out there kind of is in tune with the sun and moon, so we don't need to speak about that all that much. But it is so very, very important, because ultimately the sun is what generates our reality. So the sun is in this conjunction. So this is a moment of understanding, a moment of vision. Vision always when the sun meets Mercury. And, combustion. It is a fiery energy. And in the sign of Pisces, that fire is just bioluminescence. But how important is bioluminescence in nature? Because Pisces, especially those last degrees, are the deep sea, the deep water, where there's no sunlight, there's split pitch black darkness. There's not all that much color. Gemini, the sensory, in a sensory way, does need something, color, palpability, does need something. So this sun in Pisces to me is that bioluminescence. It gives enough light for Gemini, for example, to perceive something. But that very light is sometimes for the being itself who emanates the light in order to sense, to see, to attract mate, or whatever it uses it for, camouflage. But sometimes it is the lure, if you know what I mean. And Mars is, so yeah, this square as disillusioning and as, sad, painful sometimes. Goodbyes need to be said. Life is life. No one's perfect, or I don't know. Whatever this, but with great understanding, and being masters of our own reality, knowing what we can allow into our mental sphere, Gemini, Mars there, and what not, and what reaction we can have, and what we allow ourselves and not. This discipline, well, that is always in the favor. And Saturn in the sign of Pisces does, fortify spirit, belief, feeling secure because we know that spirit is with us, whatever that means to you. That is a big plus. That helps greatly, especially because, as I said, Aries is packed with energy, yes, but so is Pisces, especially this week, because we have Saturn, we have Sun, Mercury, we have Neptune. So that is a lot of energy. Next week it's gonna be a little bit different because, as I said, Aries and then Taurus. And at the time when we have this triple conjunction squaring Mars, Venus is anaretic and squaring Pluto. So this might be a very intense day on the 16th. Emotionally, big decisions, big choices, when the disillusionment does something. So this is a moment of action, and to me this is quite positive. Now on the world stage, now this might signify when it kind of becomes visible to us that there is an economic crisis, there is some kind of crisis ongoing, value crisis, rapid value changes, drops in currency. But why? Because there is a sudden change in behavior in masses. And this is where no software or nothing, not even sociology, can, anticipate errors and, sudden, just like collective psychology is just like individual one. Sometimes individual just behaves differently, weirdly. Pisces energy there for no reason. It doesn't have to have a big correlation to it. Hormones. Like hormones are hormones. End of. And this can also be expressed collectively. We shift our behavior as consumers economically, that will also collapse something and start building something else. So this is like really explainable, and we might have a moment like this. But there is a lot of, let's say, positive energy there as well. Because after on the 17th, Venus is in the sign of Taurus, and she is quite comfortable there. So this is a really good period for all of the earthly expressions of Taurus and Venus: beauty, healthcare, senses, pleasure. And even when this is not quite possible now, it works very well with the Aries energy because it motivates us that much stronger to fight for that holiday, that moment of respite, our goals, our whatever, our dreams, our healing, for example, with Chiron, to do the work, to stay strong. So this is ultimately motivational and positive. And with Venus, our financial decisions, and as I said, anything that has to do with value, even how we trade our skills, our more personal values, and our behavior, emotionally speaking or sensually speaking, is gonna be highlighted here. And Venus, of course, is holding a sextile with Saturn. And this is really, really beautiful energy because, as I said, grounded faith, grounded moral, or the Saturn in the sign of Pisces, proceeding with full awareness of what we have inside, is always gonna be rewarding materially or physical reality. For example, a not so positive expression of Pisces. If you are a person who knows that is highly influenceable by friends and social circle, etc., then of course, when you have this big important something in a project or whatever in your life, it is very wise to stay away from the social circle. So it is not so positive seen through a lens, but it is the sacrifice Saturn is very understandable from another. And also the Sun sextiling Pluto. This is also really important because this is alchemical energy. This is where the dream is there. This is where it leads to something. This is where a deep soul level understanding leads somewhere. And really good energy for artists when intuition dreams guide you. When, Pluto working and sacrificing, you know, and not necessarily in a charitable way, Pisces, but for a common good, is beneficiary in any sense, way, shape, and form, where karma can be instant. And then at the very end of the week, before I get there, the Sun also holds a square to Mars. So this is two fiery planets at conflict with each other. So this might be really hard for the mind or for the ego, but at the same time, wisdom, diligence, and having deep faith and trust in spirit is ultimately the right one of the right choices, because it gets you somewhere one way or another. Now, needless to say that I'm speaking about all this Piscean energy and I am focusing on the more spiritual expression, but this can also represent people from the past, that old dream, which, that old childhood dream, which you probably, well, it's not, wasn't for me, you have all the reasons why not, and this was like that all your life, and you always had the reasons not, one after another, and now something happens and the dream is comes alive in a way you did not expect, one where it's full of possibilities, but it's heavily Piscean. Sometimes the old flame is not there and you just smilingly let the dream die and something else takes its place. This is just an example, but the Pisces, strong Pisces energy can evoke the past in any way, people, connections, communication, exes, childhood friends, childhood memories, deja vu's, past life, everything spiritual, everything psychological, strong fated moments of healing also because of the triple conjunction Vesta is there, and then because we have Saturn in the sign of Pisces, so healing is promoted because, as I said, Pisces also dissolves the limitations. That which was not so easily healable, if this even makes sense, until now, well, suddenly maybe there are openings, maybe there are ways, maybe there are, Saturn comes with solutions as well sometimes. They have a cost, Saturn, of course, but there is something. And then at the end of the week, Mercury leaves Pisces and enters into the sign of Aries. So Mercury is in the head zone. It's quick, it's spontaneous, it is also full of ideas, full of synchronicity, full of quickness, full of randomness. Sometimes this is not all that favorable because, this strong Aries energy with the other planets does spark a lot of conflicts this period. And these conflicts are sometimes religious, sometimes deeply emotional, sometimes ego crisis. So this is really, really difficult. This is not an easy energy. Even for, people who have little placements or little energetic importance personally in the sign of Aries, now feel that area of life which was usually peaceful or not all that happened, or Aries, everything was always the way they took action, wanted the head, their direction was kind of fulfilled. Now things are much more chaotic. It's not as simple as it used to be. So yes, having your way now has a high cost with that Jupiter, but fulfilling the cost gets you far. So this is how we can interpret this Aries energy. And Mercury the mind there, so yeah. The good part is that it can really help you say certain things, help your mind reach certain places where it usually doesn't for a short period, of course. Gestures, moments, initiations, it doesn't have to be something permanent. For example, that Mercury connection who you don't really trust, but why not? You take the risk. What's the worst that can happen? And this isn't either good or bad, but this is just an example where the mind reaches into certain places it doesn't usually. Now the bad part is quick words, angry words. The mind is everything and we ignore the heart. And Venus in the sign of Taurus, well, Venus is pleasure. Venus is emotion and heartly and the heart in very many ways. But this is not the most pure heart because this is in Taurus, so the lower ego. So the earthly self's heart, not necessarily the center of our being heart, just the earthly self's heart. So let's, not trust this, earthly Venus in the sense that it has the full truth of our being's deepest desires, because it really, really doesn't. But, Pluto grinding again down on these last degrees of Capricorn, well, that can be big reality checks and big moments when, as I said, fate dishes out something to us, but we also dish out something back at fate, where a big personal commitment, for example, Pluto, I'm taking back power over something forever. Or, big, big moves happening for in everyone's life, but a fight, a struggle, and burning energy. And sometimes the struggle is to fight the ego, to fight the self, to fight the survival mode, to fight the lower expression of Aries, of Taurus, of Pisces, of course, and very soon Aquarius. Because this Pluto, when Pluto usually touches a sign, it amplifies the power of that sign. It kind of shows us in so very many ways, personally in our lives, of course, within us, interiorly, and outside collectively, in so many ways, why that sign is important in the zodiac. As in, it will highlight that sign's power in our lives and individually and collectively. Aquarius is in there is Aquarius the individual and the collective. Okay, we get that. Society and us individual. Okay. But all the other things are technology, internet, everything that has to do with internet, everything that has to do with collective mind. And right now, I do believe it's not exaggerated to speak about collective mind, because our knowledge as a species is already stored, and it runs even outside our awareness and will and express knowledge of what actually it's doing there. But it runs itself, so it exists already. And Pluto will show us very, very soon the confirmation to this, that yes, it exists. A collective mind already exists, and there are gonna be so very many ways in which this is absolutely useful. But there is other side of technology, the Uranian expression, what it did to the mind. Because everyone alive today is kind of part of the very first generation in humanity's history who had a very technologized life. So no one before us, well, actually, I would like to say Atlantis, Pisces, huh? Yeah, well, I don't even know how to put this in other words, but maybe we can imagine that technology and a big usage and making technology a big part of our lives does things collectively to our species. Now, if we want to take Atlantis into consideration, then we know the no-nos of it. Whatever it is that we are not supposed to do. But if we don't take this in consideration, then we are going to be seeing the collective illnesses, Pluto, of weaknesses, problems really that technology created in the history of our species. And Aquarius, something which is new to nature, new to us, new to everything, and new to the whole of creation, because no one had technology in our way, shape, sense, and form. Now, Saturn in the sign of Pisces means that there is no time, or time actually, even if we can see it, understand it in a linear way, it's not always linear. Pluto in Aquarius does bring forth the discovery of this. So this is where things are gonna get a bit interesting, especially later on when Uranus enters the sign of Gemini in after 2026, because that's a communication which we never ever form of communication which we never ever experienced before. But who said that cannot be done temporarily within time? So yes, we will see all of these expressions of Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. So whatever is happening in our lives right now is just a preparation for that. So we're still in this phase of deep karmic endings and also new beginnings. And if this Aries equinox, because what's special about it, straight after the equinox, there's the new moon, 0 degrees in Aries. Now that's important. That is significant. That is important, not just because of the 0 degrees, but because it's on the world stage. It's public. It's new. It's explosive. It's sudden. Even it's in a way fated. Even, but on the other hand, with Jupiter in the sign of in the sign of Aries, whatever that we brought to the table as well. So that is going to be quite an intense energy when we are going to be seeing where whatever is happening right now is leading us to. So that will be a moment either with big moves, big new beginnings, or a new beginning that is was under construction. This is where we push it into the future for real. So yes. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for all the love. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for all the kindness. And I'm wishing everyone a lot of endurance and deep wisdom and connection with the divine this week, as we are going to be needing it. Until next time, bye for now.